tools and the data that's presented, you know, completely flabbergasted. However, when you get to your document and the recommendations for municipalities and state agencies, what degree of granularity do you get to for the municipalities? When you take towns such as South Kingstown, North Kingstown, etc., you have town councils, which are basically the lay citizens, the non-technical, etc. Is this going to be a platform for action, or is this just going to be one of those things that gets lost? And all of a sudden, 50, 75 years from now, everybody's wading in the water, and everybody said, gee, we should have acted way back now.
Right. I have an answer, but I'll let Grover take a first shot at it.
What we're hoping to do is, as I said, train the municipalities in the use of the tools and try to prepare them for taking a look into the future. We've also incorporated a lot of that and have been working with state planning so that the municipalities have to do a comprehensive plan review that's due by 2016. And embedded within that review, they're supposed to do a climate change analysis. So we've been working with state planning to take and sort of integrate these tools into the state comprehensive plan review so that as the municipalities are doing this, they can pick up on this data and use it for doing that. What the municipalities do individually is really up to the municipality. Some are obviously more forward-thinking than others, but we are trying to provide them with the best and equal basis of information that we have as to what the future holds and how to prepare for that future. As I said, some municipalities are much better at it, some have more technical capability to deal with it. But what we've been trying to do, like with storm tools, many of the municipalities don't have GIS experts. And so the ones that do have GIS experts obviously can manipulate maps and all the rest of it. Storm tools, you don't need to have GIS expertise. You can go on your smartphone now and pick it up and get on it and look at it. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, but as good as the data is, sometimes the data asks more questions than answers.
That's correct.
So to get someone to be able to be savvy enough to interpret that data and see what the implications of that are.
Right. One of the things that, as I indicated earlier, is what we're trying to do is the first part, we're looking at trying to develop what we're calling adaptation 101 and 102. We're looking at trying to develop a course work for municipalities that one would show them what the tools are, how to use them, and what they mean, what the results mean. The second half of the course would be then, okay, now that you've got that information, what do you do with it and how do you adapt? We're trying to provide the training for municipalities, so it would not only be for planners, but it would be also for their conservation boards, the planning boards, zoning boards, those types of individuals. And we're looking at having it run on a continuous basis because we're going to need to do that both to update the material, but also, as we're all well aware, those board numbers are changing all the time. So we're anticipating those types of things and trying to put mechanisms in place to deal with that. But again, it's going to be up to the individual municipality of how they take that information and use it.
As you know, when we wrote the original red book, 200 meetings were held with the association, which is why we wanted to zone protected debate and was to use it. With the speech SAMP, we showed popular points, several of the popular points association. We kind of would like to know what would be the best strategy for us to engage and actually get a lot of our questions answered on a more site-specific basis through this whole process, because you described it as a statewide approach, but actually, you know, all SAMPs are local, so let's, what would be the best approach for us to engage with this?
Very good question.
And what's the time frame?
I'm afraid I don't have an answer for you right now. Where this project is probably another 3 to 4 years out, so I'm hoping I'll have a better answer within the next year or two. I think as we start to get into the training aspects, it would be hoped that at some point that the training could be offered to other than boards and officials, to actually get it down. Because I think we need to get it right down to, and that's one of the reasons we developed the homeowner's guide. You got to get it down to almost the individual homeowner so that they understand. Because in our system of government, we're only as strong as the weakest link that we have. And when you're talking about resiliency, that is going to be the individual properties. And we have to get down to that level if we can.
And we do a lot of, we have in the past done a lot of small group civic organization meetings. We've done, community groups, yacht clubs. So we do, when there's interest, especially from a community group that wants to know more and get engaged, just contact us, which, and then we can help to facilitate, a better interaction, because we want to work with the people who are ready to implement and who are interested involved.
Having said that, though, I don't think we're ready to give you the solutions yet.
No, we don't have a magic bullet. We do have a catalog of adaptation options, but
We will have it.
magic bullet.
I don't know about a magic bullet.
You can adaptation options.
Oh, yeah, well, no, right, we do have a start to that right now.
And now we continue to go.
Yes.
I have a suggestion. I think that it would be important to work with the chambers of commerce because this has profound economic impact. And they are probably, the most vocal lobbying organizations, private organizations within the municipality. It would have the most influence, I think, even more than, I just think that it would be important to do some workshops for the chambers, the business owners. So that's the dollar sign impact that's the largest one. We're in scholarship this past weekend. We know that this is Beach SAMP.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away
No.
easily.
That's a good point.
A lot of money being spent.
Grover mentioned earlier the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council. And so, just so folks are aware, we're not the only agency working on climate change issues in the state. It just so happens that we're the agency that's probably going to be most impacted because, frankly, the most significant changes are going to occur along the coast. Coastal erosion, sea level rise, and storm inundation. But there are health implications that are going to affect everyone, no matter where you live in the state. There's going to be inland flooding in any low-lying area, regardless of where you are in the state. So the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council is made up of a number of different state agencies. The CRMC sits on it, the DEM sits on it, the Department of Health sits on it, and to your point, Carla, the Commerce RI sits on it. And so I would hope that the local chambers of commerce help sort of move that up to Commerce RI to make that on their radar screen that it's an important thing that they need to tackle as part of the EC4, if you will. So there's going to be strategies and adaptation recommendations, mandates, either through various channels of state government, whether it be through the legislature or the governor's office through executive order. But all of these things will filter down to the local level.
I have a question about advanced water systems, wastewater systems. Is there any interest in limiting those for new construction? Because that basically allows areas of high impact to be built on, whereas I think Massachusetts allows that. I know it's really good in care.
Yeah, Massachusetts, I think, actually, through Title V, bans the use of septic tanks within B zones, and that they have to be elevated in structure.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the beginning of your question. Advanced wastewater treatment system?
Yeah, that's basically allowing houses to be built. I'm in South Kingston. I remember 20 years ago, having gone to a meeting, 25 years ago, and it was like the South Shore was safe because was unwilling to put in a sewer system. So once advanced water systems came into existence, all of a sudden properties that had previously been non-buildable,
Sure.
all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And so for many years, communities sort of shed their planning responsibilities and basically relied on the state wastewater rules, which required a 3-foot separation to groundwater. And
And a half
so,
acre.
pardon?
And a half acre.
And a half acre, right? So, but technology, of course, came along, and quite frankly, the wastewater technologies that we have today, as compared to even 10 years ago, is far better. We're getting a much higher quality effluent, and so therefore we're really protecting our resources through this. It has, however, as you just mentioned, allowed development to occur in areas that had shallower groundwater, because some of these systems can be installed in areas where you don't have 3-foot separation, and in fact, in some cases, you could have as little as 18 inches. However, if you're a coastal property, beware. Sea level rise is going to be affecting your system, and anyone's system that's in close proximity to the shoreline, because as sea level rise, guess what? That pushes the freshwater lens in and up. And we're already seeing this out on Cape Cod, where they are measuring groundwater on Cape Cod rising exactly with the rate of sea level rise at a number of groundwater wells throughout the Cape. So this is well documented, and we know this is happening. Fortunately, the University of Rhode Island right now is looking, actually doing a research project. They've just wrapped up, I think at least a year, maybe even a year and a half, of work looking at climate change impacts to on-site wastewater treatment systems, both from a groundwater standpoint as well as a temperature standpoint. How is that going to impact systems? And out of that, I suspect, could potentially be some rule changes with DEM in terms of what is permissible in areas in the future for building along the shore.
Listening to your presentations and watching the tools up here after you have a chance to check a few out today, it is mind-blowing that adult like me can sit down at a computer and these great graphics are coming up to show all this information. I'm proud of us for doing that, and I'm actually here to make a comment and ask a question about something else I'm proud of, which is Rhode Island's constitutional right for the citizens to use, enjoy, pass along the shore. In just that one of your slides, which showed a red zone of where expected sea level edge will be in a certain number of years, I know that stretch of shore, and I can walk or point to a spot and say, in a third of the time, there are places where the edge of the sea will now be meeting the garden walls of private property homes. And my question is, and I've asked you over and over, has the SAMP process specifically addressed getting the Rhode Island constitutional guarantees protected while all these things roll shoreward? And I won't even get into the point of the Gibson ruling being an absurd anomaly. We have the right to pass on the shore even when it's high tide. But is the SAMP going to specifically say or have a rule, and that would be asking about the red book part of things, that when water gets to a certain part, does the public have the right to walk across your deck? Is there a way the property owner would have to give the public a way to go around their property to continue passing down the shore? Is it being addressed specifically?
It is something that's under consideration. I can't tell you how it will come out. I know that when we are looking at seawalls and permitting seawalls, we have a rule change that's looking at requiring that access be allowed up and over the seawall. So, because we know as soon as we put in a seawall, we will lose the beach very shortly, and the loss of that access. So we are looking at those types of changes, and considering that within all of this as we go forward. I can't promise that in the future that sea level rise doesn't catch up with us to the point that that's not practical anymore, but we are certainly considering it and trying to incorporate it in some of the regulations.
Thanks for your comment.
I am blown away by the data also, and I do a lot of the Attorney General's office. But the data for me, I mean, I've got a whole bunch of things that I would want the data for that go even beyond this. And I do fully appreciate the level of detail in it. And I also want to commend you where the state of Florida, you can't even, as a state agency, mention climate change, where Rhode Island is taking a position. I'm very impressed.
Just as a follow-up to the question about online access, it seems like you were presenting the table of contents, looking for feedback, and that would suggest places where you might want to expand on the table of contents, and maybe some other places too. For instance, septic systems specifically, and whether we need to consider the different types of alternative septic systems that are more resilient than the ones that we have now. Because, yeah, they are more functional, because these septic systems are more functional in terms of nitrogen removal and efficiency and your prosperity, but resilient maybe not.
Yeah, I can envision that, as Jim has talked about, if we can, Beach SAMP it seems to grow in terms of demands of information that we'd like to have, and being able to map the groundwater bulge and the response to the groundwater bulge would be one of those that we would love to have. If we could map that, then you might be able to say within those areas you need to increase the separation distance because of the future impact of the bulge catching up with the leach field itself. So those are the types of things that we would like to do. Is how much we can get funding for and continue to push. As we've indicated, one of the reasons we are trying to keep the Beach SAMP as a guidance and policy document more than a regulatory document is so that we can continue to adapt and gather that type of information and feed it into it. This is probably going to be one of our most important SAMPs that we've ever done, and needs to be very flexible and adaptive as we go forward, because the science, if you just follow the science is changing dramatically each day as we follow this, and we need to be able to reflect that in the document.
And the part that we have here is being the stakeholder input, so that the things that you think about are fully reflected in where you are now and how you proceed.
Given how fast things are changing, is there any discussion or development of Beach SAMP or permitting processes that you don't necessarily get a permit and you're done in the future for even wastewater treatment in certain areas? If you know, Green Hill Beach is one of the areas that is considered a special area for wastewater treatment systems. To say, yeah, we'll give you a permit if you do A, B, C, and D, but in 5 years it's got to be reviewed again because we don't know what inundation or storm surge or sea level was.
Yeah. And that's a very good question, a very good point. One of the things that we're trying to take into consideration within the Beach SAMP and again, sort of change the paradigm in the way the communities think about things is that we're trying to look at design lives, and that our position along the shoreline really right now is temporary, and that you really need to think about this shoreline is rolling back and we need to be able to roll with it. So I know that our in-water permits do carry time frames that require re-permitting, so that you just don't get a permit and you're done like an Army Corps permit. It requires you to reapply at some point. So these are some of the things that are under consideration that we're looking at. Certainly, as I said, design lights is going to be a very important aspect of the SAMP and how we look at things. The more important the infrastructure, the longer the design life, I think the higher the standard we're going to look for for building, for example. Particularly public infrastructure is critical to us. We want to see it built to the best standard so that it's there when we need it.
It also seems like what we've got is so much built up shoreline, there really it's not so much restricting new development and what to do with what's going to be funding here where we need to do that.
I think in a lot of areas you're very right.
John Bluthroyd has a photograph of a house that was sitting probably the farthest out on the beach in Charlestown. That house he always looked at the '78 storm event and had a picture of that house, and it was sitting out on the beach farther out than any other house. Everyone else was sort of sitting back, and we're going to see a lot more of that in the future. We're going to see a lot of houses that are literally at the water's edge and beyond, particularly after the next big storm when it comes. So I just wanted to follow up quickly. I'm glad to hear a lot of interest in wastewater systems, but I think as we develop these tools more in this coming year, at that point we'll want to be sitting down with our sister agencies like DEM, for example, and saying, here's some great tools that we have. Now let's talk about what we want to do with approval of new septic systems or alterations to existing septic systems in these particular areas of high risk.
We're already sitting down with DOT and starting to work with them as we gave been sitting down with state planning, Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency. We've been having a series of meetings with. So as we start to gather this information, we're disseminating it to them so they also understand and start to incorporate this within their planning now.
The pedestrian bridge.
Well, I was thinking more of the document that was just done by state planning in terms of the susceptibility of bridges to sea level rise, and the last one that DOT constructed is the most susceptible to sea level rise. So, we are trying to bring along our sister agencies as we move forward.
I think we're just about at our time here, but if there's any other, really try again. If there's any other comments, if you know the people who weren't able to come tonight, but who would be interested, the slides will be up online, and the comment period for this outline and the process are all up on beachsamp.org. And we would encourage you all, we want your feedback, we want to hear from you, so please, if you have any additional thoughts after you leave here tonight, please just jot them down and send them to us. We really appreciate it.
And as those comments come in, we'll make sure that the SAMP subcommittee gets those and is aware of what's being commented on.
Thank you all.
Thank you.